Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important 90 or so minutes of your day. I am Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador for today's show. And today's show title is Who Owns Your Thoughts? With me today are my fabulous co hosts. We'll start with Willow, our trauma consultant,
Hi, everyone.
and Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love, everyone.
So today's show, I guess this is my idea. We wanted to talk. We're actually attending the autonomy Q&A just at the same time that we're supposed to be doing our regular planning thing, and this topic came up, and I thought, hey, this is a great topic. Let's talk about this. But the idea here is who actually does own your thoughts? In a lot of cases, people think they're thinking their own thoughts, but in a lot of cases, they're not. It's all this repetitive advertising certainly impacts a lot of people's minds. And in a lot of cases, when you think of something like, hey, I'm hungry, the first thing that comes to mind is whatever the last TV commercial that you watched that said pizza or hamburgers or whatever it is that they usually advertise. Or, hey, I need a new car, on and on and on, a lot of that stuff. But in addition to that, you've got the social engineers that are constantly hitting you with news or supposed news and media production via the TV shows, the video, social media, as well as movies and so forth, that also kind of influence what you're thinking. And in a lot of cases, they know about that too, and people have paid to make that stuff part of your mind. And so does anybody have any initial thoughts when it comes to this topic, or anything that we may want to cover to make sure we get on this thing?
Wow, that's basically it's a huge topic, I feel, and there's if you even like go in like yogic tradition, thinking and the different kinds of thinking that are there and how that has been defined, it is so much more complex. And from like thoughts as we would know them in the Western world, as even identified by modern psychology, seem that categorization seems rather rough compared to what other subtle levels people from thousands of years back seemingly have been taking that. So my mind is my thoughts are all over the place. I'm trying to pinpoint like somewhere where to start, but as you laid out already, it's like a very good question worthy of asking. Is like how much of our thoughts, like how we in our normal day by day living would define thoughts are our thoughts really, and how much percentage of those thoughts are actually other people's thoughts who have been carefully installed or imprinted upon our minds and basically running, at least a large portion of the program, of the programming that of the spells that we're under, so to say. And that's kind of frightening in a way, right? Because you wonder like how much of what I'm doing, because what we are doing is certainly influenced and tainted by the thoughts that we have, and is a reflection of the thoughts also. So the outside manifestation, the physical interactions that we're having in the physical realms are certainly a mirror, something that is mirroring our inner life. And then well, if I look at certain people, I'm not sure if I even want to know the inner life if the outer life is already so upside down.
How about you, Wella? Any thoughts?
Well, anytime I kind of approach this topic, the first thing that comes to mind was watching the Bird Box movie. Because at the time I had a Fitbit, and I didn't think that there was a good plot line. I didn't enjoy the movie. I thought the movie itself, the whole plot, everything about it was really kind of stupid. But I had a Fitbit at the time, so I would not watch the movie, but I'd watch my Fitbit. And all of the music that was playing started making my heart my heart rate go up. And I realized at that moment that this movie really was just a kind of a shit movie. But the music in it, like I guess it would be neuro-linguistic programming, the sounds were eliciting a response from my body that had nothing to do with my logical thoughts, or like, it wasn't like, oh, this is a really good plot line and that's actually really scary, or this is really good. It was just straight, like, it was trickery. And it really made me dislike not only that movie, but a lot of other thriller kind of suspense movies. But it also made me wonder how much of this is in advertisements. So whenever you see an advertisement for like the sports channel, or like the intros to sports channels and the intros to the TV shows, I'm like, how much of like watching the intros actually gets you programmed to enjoy these shows that are really, maybe they're pushing an agenda that you don't know, maybe they're really just bad writing and you're just wasting your time. But how much of our time is actually being wasted on things that without this trickery, you actually wouldn't find them as interesting or entertaining, and you wouldn't be spending as much of your time on them as you do.
Absolutely. Those 2 points I want to make is there's a Albert Schweitzer, the book, The Decline and Restoration of Civilization, that I think was written in 1923, kind of identifies an idea that like when the agrarian society moves to like a manufacturing society and people are occupied, and certainly in the early 1900s, people were on like a 6-day schedule. They were working probably 12 hours a day. And so for the most part, he suggested that with this kind of mentality and the mechanization of manufacturing, that people would, not really have the time to think, that they would have to perform these repetitive tasks. And by the time that they got off of work, they would be exhausted. And really the only thing they would want to do is be entertained. They would want to like release their brain from the environment that they had, and that it would put people in a place where they weren't thinking very much at all. And certainly he was right on the money, because if you look at how many people, or how many of the population are critical thinkers, it's a very small percentage of the population. And so the people that are actually thinking and kind of going through a logical approach to what's going on in the world, it's very small. And so I would suggest that those are the few people that are actually thinking their own thoughts, or at least having some inclination of their own thought. Whereas most of the people are just regurgitating a lot of the information that's already being packed into their head with all these other things. The other thing is, there's a documentary on YouTube called Surveillance Capitalism. And one of the people in it is Shoshana Zuboff, which is I think she's a Harvard doctor of something. But she's talking about how there's this new form of capitalism, I guess you want to call it. I don't know if you could really call it capitalism, but it's this idea of collecting information on people, and that being that amount of information, and with the platforms that are out there like Facebook, that they can collect enough data that they can actually target a message to somebody that will get them to take action and actually like put their feet in somebody's business without them even knowing that they're actually doing it. And that's a Facebook study that was conducted in 2014 called the Contagion exercise, in which they kind of went through this, how much social media can influence people's not only thoughts but actions. And that's pretty scary when people can like turn up at a restaurant and they don't even realize that they wanted to be at that restaurant.
That's definitely a thing, cause more than it must have been more than 20, almost 25 years ago, there were reports and articles about this. Was it in the Pentagon, in the American Defense Ministry, who had supposedly at that time a more than 90% probability of predicting one's reaction in certain under certain circumstances by the data that would have been collected from each citizen through their online conversations, cell phone data, phone recordings, everything that everything data wise that has been put out there. And so there's talks about an avatar for every citizen basically that there is at this computer game, at this hub. And where then in a military style they would run certain situations and certain stage certain events, and where they claimed back then that they would have almost 100% predictability of how what Mike would be doing if, I don't know, the hurricane hits, or what Willow would be doing if the fridge is empty. And that's kind of frightening in itself, that by the things that we even right now are putting out there, the exposure that we're exposing ourselves basically to the world even by doing that. And what can actually how this data, how this information can be transformed in predicting outcomes, which is it's just another huge encouragement to live spontaneously, isn't it?
Yes. Well, and the idea of surveillance capitalism is kind of modeled after like the cell phone producers who are actually producing and selling the cell phones at a loss, because the information that they gather is more valuable than the cell phone. So they'll practically give you a cell phone at this point just so they can get your data. And it's the same way with a lot of other things, like Ford Motor Company, for example. They're like, because they can track the information as you're driving and stuff, and all the things that you're saying inside the car and all that kind of thing, that's more valuable than selling cars. So like getting and then of course, like with the automation of your washing machine and your dishwasher and all those other things, they're essentially creating the circumstance in which they're giving you those things because they're going to collect data on you that they could be useful for them, for other companies and so forth.
Wow.
I mean, at that point, you're not even the consumer. You're not the customer. You are the product. You're the one. Your attention is the one being sold. And I mean, if people thought of it that way, that you're a product for sale when you get on these social media sites. And I am no different than anyone else. First thing I do when I wake up, and I have to stop myself sometimes, is I'll go and check, see how many Facebook notifications I have.
It's definitely like that. So if it's for free, check if you're the consumer, if you're the product, and you'll find out that you're the product. And just like you said, Willow, it's that's something, like a shift in mind that is very accurate, I feel. And whether it's like with online media, you just mentioned Facebook, and all those things, those that make our life. Look at credit cards when that came up. There's the next thing, the next stage is already in the pipeline, has been there, and you all know like what's that about, with all tattooed stuff coming on the pipe and the smart dust and God knows what. And if it's for free and if it's being promoted to you, it's for free, it will make your life so much more comfortable, it will do this and that for you, then that's the time when we should be really aware of what's going on. My grandfather always said, there's nothing for free in life, boy. The only thing that's for free is death. And even for that, you have to pay a bunch of money, but you won't be around to have to.
You reminded me of, it just kind of slipped out of my mind. Yeah, it slipped out. Never mind. Sorry. Oh, never mind. It came back. I found out, I can't remember where it was, but there is a country or a set of countries where the advertisement of pharmaceutical drugs is not allowed on TV. And I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the way that like pharmaceutical drugs are pushed on TV nowadays. And a lot of times it's like images of people who are, you know, they've got a sad face, and they're like, are you dealing with depression? Are you dealing with this? Do you want to be happy? And then all of a sudden you see this happy person, and because they take a pill, and then all of a sudden they're happy. Or they buy something, and all of a sudden they're happy. Or they get something, you know, like you see, it makes you think that the only thing you need to do is buy this one more thing, spend your money here, get this drug, and you're going to be happy. So they're already targeting. It's very nefarious how they're targeting. They understand that there is a desire that's not being met in a lot of people, that they're not fulfilled in their lives, that they're having trouble, they're struggling with their day-to-day tasks. And all of that can be fixed if you just have this one thing.
So an aspect of thinking is to compare, right? The ability to compare, and that in a way is being taken away if we're living in a world where there's, you know, this groupthink going on, where there's only, you know, only commercials for this and for that, where in the end, like the message, you know, it might be different colors, but it's all the same thing, just different colors of it, so to say. And where the difference between thoughts or lines of thoughts or even opinions are really so superficial, but everything that lies, you know, a little deeper is actually the same thing. You know, like in a political context, we were touching upon that some time ago, you know, where we say the left versus the right, you know, how it's a setup, how it's you know, the two wings of the same bird. So, you know, the same head controls the left wing and the right wing, and where it's just something, you know, being put in front of us in order to appear as if there was a choice, actually, but really and truly, you know, there's none. And the choice that we are given is like I don't know, buy this car or buy that car, and if you get the car, you get all the nice girls, and buy this cell phone, buy that cell phone, or drink this and eat that. But in the end, you know, if you analyze the ingredients or what it does, like there's not much difference in it. And, you know, the lifespan is limited, and planned obsolescence has been built in all this stuff. So we're being, you know, really screwed over on so many levels. And we're like, our thinking is being kept at a certain level. So we're not really learning, even through our educational system, we're not learning like to like look over here, look over there, and then compare, you know, and get like maybe truly unique opinions or perspectives, you know, that might be, you know, outrageous or like, you know, way out there, but you still, you know, you have the ability to listen to them, to take them in, and then compare different positions. It seems that, you know, all the positions that we are confronted with through the media that we have been, you know, covering just in the last few minutes, they seem to be, you know, actually the same thing, just with a little different flavor here and there, but not far off the center, so to say. And that really seems to take away our ability even to compare. You know, we cannot. There's not. You know, if you compare, I don't know, Pepsi and Coke, then in the end, you know, what's the difference really? The difference is not that great. But if you would have been given like, I don't know, a coconut water and Coke, then there's a variety there. You know, we can we can differentiate, and we can compare the taste and the texture and what are the ingredients and what's in there and what does it do. But yeah, it seems to be pushed in a way where we don't even have the physical ability to compare and to see different options, because the only option that is given to us is the same old system.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
it really. I would
Okay.
disagree with that. I don't think it doesn't take away your ability. I would say it makes it harder, but also it tricks you into thinking that you are doing that you're already choosing, that you are comparing this item versus this item, and not realizing because they are packaged differently, they say different things on them, that they are, you honestly think that they are different products. So it's not that you lose the ability, but you are tricked into believing that you've already employed that ability, that you've already used your reason, and there's no need to use it any further.
Well, if there's no need to use it any further, you won't use it any further, and just with a muscle that will deteriorate if you don't stimulate it, if you don't train it. Like thinking, I see the same. If you don't use it to the ability and to the potential that we have been given, then at some stage, you can't recover. You can't push the boundaries much further if you spend.
Yeah, you are right.
That
I didn't even think of that, but yeah, that would diminish your actual ability to do it after a period of time.
And then especially like if you were born into a society or into an environment where nobody else was even exposed to something, outside the box, then, and each generation further down, seemingly it doesn't, I'm not saying impossible, but it makes it seemingly much more harder to, to get that thought. If like even mammals, like if the parent generation does not teach the little one that, oh, geez, this cat over there, don't go there because it's going to eat you. If they don't teach them, then it's gonna walk basically straight in the mouth of the cat because it never learned that. So if our parents and our parents' have not been able to teach us certain things because they were not taught, then wow, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to really cut through everything. But still, there's still something deeper that if we manage to cut through, and I believe that potential is there. Even with the worst of conditioning and when everything seems to be atrophied, I think is the right word, using the analogy with the muscles, but there is still, in physical training, I learned that like muscular adaptation, physical adaptation to stimuli from the outside is possible way until the 70s, maybe even further, and the same way I believe like with our ability to cut through the superficial thinking, which we associate with thinking is in the brain or in the head alone, which is not true, I feel. If you can cut through that and to go deeper in a thought process that is even, like we are thinking, even if we're in deep sleep, if the mind or the thoughts that we usually refer to are, supposed to be sleeping away, but we still have thinking, we still have thought processes going on then. And I feel if you cut through deeper, then there's the potential of actually tapping into something that is always there and the potential that is there for us always. But, the current conditioning does seem to make it much more harder to actually reach there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think this is kind of, when it comes to choice, having a perceived choice versus an actual choice is something that, I think a lot of people fall victim to. Certainly with the political environment at the moment, people are going back and forth about, which one should they choose, Coke or Pepsi, when the reality is that they don't even know the question of the real choice that they should have is, should they be giving any power to these people versus taking power and taking responsibility for their lives themselves. That would be a good choice to make. But that's not the choice they're being given. They're being given a choice that pretty much relinquishes all their responsibilities for taking on their own life and handing it off to somebody that has no intention of making it easier on them. And so in a lot of cases that in itself is kind of a game that they're engaged in, and a thinking a strategy or, trying to win the game of a game that they can't win.
And the choice, if you relate the choice to the thoughts or to the thinking processes that we have the ability to choose as well, right? Like we can choose our thoughts, we can choose what kind of thoughts are really in our mind. And if we, just like you said, if we take self-responsibility for our thinking process, for our thoughts, then wow, what potential is there? And I found this quote from Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, who says, keep your thoughts positive because your thoughts become your words. Keep your words positive because your words become your behavior. Keep your behavior positive because your behavior becomes your habits. Keep your habits positive because your habits become your values. Keep your values positive because your values become your destiny. So I think that kind of highlights what we have been, the point we're trying to make there, that by taking self-responsibility, it means that, although there is, manipulation and there is, scientists and technology and big money out there trying to manipulate our thinking process, and through that our behavior as well, then in the end, it takes two. It takes one to manipulate, and it takes one to let him or herself be manipulated. And if we rule out the last half of those possibilities, then we already have the reins in our hands, so to say. And then of course there's techniques and there's ways that we can learn in order to protect ourselves as well from that outside manipulation, right?
I actually had a girl in one of my support groups. I was really proud of her today, and I hope she's listening. She actually just deleted Facebook off of her phone because she's going through a trauma recovery. She's starting to become very self-aware, be aware of where her thoughts are going, and how to manage that, how to stop a spiral of depression or bad habits from happening. And she realized that a couple of basically a dumpster fire worthy conversation going on all over Facebook was triggering her and making it very difficult for her to hit close to home. It was bringing up her own emotions, and she couldn't think clearly. And she told me that she confided with a friend, a very close friend, that brought up the conversation, and she was like, I don't want to talk about that. That's very triggering for me. It's none of my business either, and I have to focus on me. And so I had to give her props, because that's really hard to do. It's really hard when everyone around you is having the same conversation, and you can't seem to get out of it. Like, you want to be a part of a conversation, you want to talk with people, but you also want to protect your own thoughts and not get swept up in this storm of negative conversations and topics that are really just going nowhere. So that kind of reminded me of what you're saying, like taking it into your own hands, taking responsibility for yourself and for the way you feel and what you think. It's not as easy as it's easier said than done, to be honest. It's really a difficult thing to do in practice.
Well, the extent to the amount of weaving that's been done around one's mind in regard to what they think and who they think they are in regard to their identity is one that's it is a tremendous amount of effort has been made to really create a circumstance where people think a particular way. Even if you look at the entire history of philosophy, for example, the literature that's out there has been skewed and really kind of shaved in a lot of ways to give people the impression that there's a particular way that the human nature is. And if you look at some of the movies, some of the superhero movies and stuff like that, they'll say, well, humans are stupid. They just can't stop fighting with each other. They can't, and that's just human nature. You just got to accept that we're just bloodthirsty savages that just want to smash each other's head for an apple or something like that. And to a large portion of the population, they've accepted that as their actual nature of themselves, when that's not true. But they built an entire logical construct that suggests that yes, that's true. And I was just reading Thucydides, our great book club just finished up Thucydides, the Peloponnesian Wars, and it reads just like the U.S. and China today. It's the totalitarians against the supposed free democracy people. But if you look at what the military, like the generals and stuff, when they talk about Thucydides, they say, well, this is just an example of the inevitability of war, that we've always got to be prepared for war because eventually it's going to happen. We're going to have to go to war at some point. And that's human nature. And, here we are. We're off on, another thought that has been impregnated into people's head. And this is just one particular profession, the soldier of fortune, the mercenaries that go out there and fight wars and so forth. That's
But
their thinking.
they have to affirm the relevance of their existence, right? So maybe that's just another commercial.
It is.
And potentially, I think it is potential, who we are, how do you say, like bloodthirsty beasts, because that certainly lies within the spectrum and the realms of who we can be. But is it the highest
Well,
and best expression
if we're
of
conditioned,
Mhm.
if we're conditioned to believe that, then yeah, we'll be that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely not the highest and best expression and our highest potential. And I think, when we usually when we think about thoughts and thinking, we think about the head, right? Like looking at our physical body. And then maybe it's not a coincidence that the head is actually on top of our body, of our physical body. And it sits, on top of the center, which is, relevant for associated with the emotion, with our emotional being, or even with like even lower with our vital being, with our instinctive being as well. And, maybe it is then that actually our mind should be ruling over those lower levels of that we certainly have as well, and that have their place as well. But I feel what commercial or what statements like the one you just quoted from the book that you're reading, Mike, is actually saying is that our mind is being hijacked in a way that the ones that should be below, or the ones that should be controlled and influenced by the mind in the proper way, are actually they have gotten loose and they're taking over the mind. So emotions is taking over the mind, and or like our physical or instinctive behaviors are taking over. And there are certainly ways of training and influencing people to do exactly that. And I feel the results of much of the mayhem that we're seeing right now in our world is caused by that people are not using their mind and their thinking process to the extent we definitely could do so. And then we're not thinking, we would say, like rational, but we are our emotions is basically running our thought processes. Our instincts are running that. And they're it's like a servant that that is becoming the despot, and is becoming the bad guy. If the servant is all of a sudden sitting in the king's seat, so to say, and or is the one who has the reins in his hand, then wow, he might not decide to do it in a nice way, if there's a nice way to do it anyway. And then our mind is being overwhelmed and overcome by all those levels of our existence, which I think is not always the best. So maybe our mind should then take back the reins and use our emotional potential, our physicality in the proper way, and keep things in place and manage it. So it's a system that is being managed by that level that has the potential to do so well.
I'd like to know y'all's thoughts, because the question that keeps coming to mind at this point is, how did we get tricked into handing over the reins? Because we've all fallen prey to it. Or at least I know I have, and I know that I'm an average human being, not the smartest person on the face of the earth, and I'm also not the dumbest. But I have been tricked into giving over the reins, giving away my power to someone else. And for me, what happened was I actually didn't know myself all that well. And so I kind of fell prey to someone could trigger me and trigger a desire or a want or a need that I wasn't meeting myself. And so therefore I ran after it. But I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on, like, how do you guys think that we got tricked into this?
I think you hit the nail on the head right there when you said, lack of self-knowledge. You didn't know yourself well. If you know yourself and if you understand yourself, then then things are already well in place, I would say. And if you realize that, oh, I didn't know myself so well, so that's why certain things took over the show. And then that's a learning process, obviously, because you learn something, you step further up. So in the greater scheme of things, even those things that might hurt and cause suffering or that in the moment don't make any sense. Why is this happening again? What's going on right there? And this doesn't make any sense. But in the greater scheme, it does make sense, because they give us an opportunity to learn and to grow and to realize things like you just mentioned. I feel, like, oh, now I understand myself a little better. Now I know myself a little better. And maybe it's just the fact of actually asking the right questions, like, oh, who am I really? Who is thinking right there, or who is running it right now? My emotions, or my fears, or my worries from the past? And okay, who's running this show?
Yeah, I would say, it's our this idea of like giving our responsibilities away to other people, to institutions, to other organizations. A lot of people say that, when we lost the church, when people stopped going to church, we lost our morality. But when was the church responsible for morality? Because if that was the case, then it's the church that failed us on morality, because we handed it over to them and they were supposed to make sure that we were moral people, and they blew it. And it's the same thing with everything else. When it comes to all these institutions, whether it be our education, or how we're going to get trained for doing our job, or who's going to take care of our health care, all these things are ones in which, when we defer our responsibility beyond ourselves, we really have to ask who is doing that and what choices do we have in regard to that delivery of service. Because in most cases, it's a negative result, and it's a negative result because we've handed over responsibility to somebody that doesn't give a damn.
It's true. What came to my mind while I was speaking was the word own, which is really in the theme for tonight, right? Who owns your thoughts? So what's the definition of owning something? To own something would mean to have, one of the definitions I believe is
paid for it.
You paid for it. You got it in a rightful way, right? You didn't steal it or take it from somebody else, but so you got it in a proper, in a rightful way, and you also have complete control over it, isn't it? So do we have complete control over our thoughts?
Unfortunately, no. Because, again, like our own ability to have our intellectual self-defense, to kind of create the filter that is what the conscious mind is supposed to be, or at least what it's capable of being, with the right, with things like the trivium and understanding, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. That's one of the ways that we can filter the information that goes into our brain that then either, gives us valuable information to make a decision or to make a choice, or we just let the stuff in, and whatever is the most basically wins. And unfortunately, when it comes to, repetitive messaging, you see what's actually happening out there when it comes to the news or magazines or television or social media. It's the stuff that's just repeated incessantly that people latch onto.
Self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you don't control what you think, you can't control what you do. Simply, self-discipline enables you to think first and act afterward. That's from Napoleon Hill, whom you mentioned last show, I believe, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sure he wasn't the first one meant to think that either.
I think I'm going to start calling you the quote master, Dennis.
Well, they hit home for me, the ability to with a few words say something that resonates deeply. I think that's a great skill that can transfer, ideas and wisdom, throughout times. And I'm very, very impressed by some of those quotes. And really, self-discipline is wow. You would think about self-discipline, to my mind, like first that would be something, okay, some outside actions, like, I don't know, the kitchen is clean every day at this time, and discipline. I see soldiers, that's a hallmark of discipline, and clothes and folded and clean and speaking, so like outside world discipline. But really and truly, when we are talking about thoughts, and what does it mean to be self-disciplined in terms of our thinking, of our thought processes. When I was when I am working, still with children, and especially in Jamaica, when I work with inner city children and youths there, I had this analogy of a bottle, and that's something that really brings it down to a very simple item that you would find lying around everywhere. So I just took up a bottle and I said, "Look here, this bottle is not full, is not complete. What's missing, sir? Oh yeah, sir. The cap. Where's the cap? Okay, go find the cap. Okay, here's the cap. All right. So let's pour some. You see this water in there. It's kind of mucky, right? Yeah, it's dirty. So it's dirty. All right. So if this is your mind, if those the thoughts represented by the water, it's kind of mucky, it's dirty, right? And you see, you have this bottle here, and the cap is on it right now. So if you don't want those negative, those bad thoughts that keep you back, that mindset that doesn't help you, that keeps you procrastinating, that keeps you stepping and treading in the same place, you don't move forward in life. If you would want to get rid of it, what would you have to do? Oh yes, of course, you have to, throw it away. And then I turn over the bottle, but look, I turn it over, it's not coming out. Oh, but sir, you didn't open the cap. Okay, unscrew the cap and throw out the water. Okay, good. So now what? So now your mind is empty. The thoughts that hindered you, like they're gone. So what? No, nothing is in there. So you can't, there's nothing still. Oh, you have to fill it, sir. Yeah, but what? Oh, nice water, good water, spring water. Yes, all right, go. Spring water, pour, clean water. We pour it in there. Is it good now? Yes, it's good. Oh, really? I take some dirty water and pour it on top. Is that no? You muck it up again. It's dirty again. It's like, what happened? Oh, we have to. After you put in the clean water, you have to put back the cap on, so nobody else can come and pour the dirty water in there. And you have to make sure that you stay in control of the cap. You are the one who opens and closes the cap, and therefore controls, what's being poured inside the bottle and not. So, that's just like a simple example how I was trying to, get that idea, across to the children of being in control, of not being run by the news, by other people, by the chit chat, by I don't know, the mainstream media, by what everybody else is doing. Like if you're really in control as much as you can of what you're letting in, then even amidst the most difficult situation where everything seems to be just foolishness around you, if you're in control of the cap, then the dirty water can be outside all the while, but you don't let it inside your bottle. You wait until you close, you find the next well to open it and to fill it with spring water.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
I was going to expand on that. I was like, until you find the next spring or the next well, because if you leave that water in the bottle for too long, it becomes stagnant or it becomes empty. Like you have to continuously be looking for a new source of clean, fresh water. And I think that's a good analogy, for the intellectual self-defense as well, is you can't just gather information and then sit on that. I've noticed that in my own mind, I will have a breakthrough about trauma. And I'm like, oh yeah, this explains this behavior, that behavior, all this. And then I'll stop searching. And then a couple weeks later, I'll be having a similar problem, or I'm having a different problem. And I'm like, why? I had all these breakthroughs. Why am I still doing this? And I was like, oh, because I stopped and I relaxed for a little bit too long. And therefore my mind became stagnant and I had to fill it with some new information. So I had to look up these symptoms, look up people's other experiences that other people have had, and kind of refresh that water in my bottle so that I'm always having something clean to refresh myself with, instead of drinking from the same bottle of water until it's empty.
I thought of something, and maybe this relates to the dirty water or something else, but when people are traumatized, there's another word for that. It's called dysregulated. And when there's a great the childhood fairy lady, she's got a great one on like what is it like to be dysregulated. and she suggests that it's like putting like headphones on where you got like blaring rock music, and you can't do anything because the music is so loud that you can't really do any. You can't focus on anything. It's unbearable, and to some degree, that's kind of another circumstance that a lot of people are, contending with, is that they have this dysregulated thing. They feel like they have no control of what's going on, even inside their head. They're lacking in control, and so when you've got an environment like that, where a good portion of the population are encountering these kind of situations, it is incredibly difficult to get people to have their own thoughts, because it's difficult. So, in that particular video, she says the opposite of dysregulated is regulated. So taking control of the things that you can take control of is that first step to establishing some kind of feeling of control that can lead down that path. But I don't know. Do you want to comment on that, Willow? Because that's certainly your area.
The only thing I can think of, sadly, right now to comment is, that's Anna Runkle, and she is the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and she's on YouTube. I suggest all of her series, all of her videos. Watch as many of them as you can. But she does talk about being dysregulated a lot. And that was kind of a cool thing for me to experience, like putting a name to it. Like when I wake up and I'm dysregulated, so my mind will just be a jumble of all the, maybe I'm triggered from a dream. Maybe I had a dream that was particularly disturbing. Maybe I remember it, maybe I don't. Or maybe I'll wake up anxious and I'm stressing about all the things that I need to do. One of the habits that she has instilled in a lot of her clients is the habit of writing down it's called the daily practice, and it's writing down your resentments and fears. No matter how trivial or how huge they are, you don't put them in order, you don't give them any attention other than just to write them down. And this helps kind of filter that water in the bottle, so to say. So you can pick out those big chunks and you set them aside. Maybe they're useful. Maybe you can examine them later and be like, oh, that's why I was feeling sick, or this is why I was, feeling off. But it kind of puts them in their place so that they're not muddying up your whole mind and causing your body to become dysregulated, and allows you to actually focus on your priorities, keeps you healthy so that you can schedule some time to go over all of the debris that got left in there, and you can kind of examine it a little bit with a clearer mind.
Are there any techniques, maybe some easy or simple to convey techniques that one could use to kind of break through, and I think that falls within trauma, of course, like like a repetitive, like a pattern of thoughts that is really hindering and really keeps people from progressing. Like, how is there some kind of technique or like a way, something that you could share with us that people could do to break those kind of negative patterns, those thought patterns, if they, once a person is already aware of, okay, that's something going on that's not good for me, like how can I break it? How can I get out of that?
Well, something that I personally use is the question why. So if I'm hungry, I'll ask myself, well, why am I hungry? Is it because I haven't eaten all day? Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. If it's no, like I just ate a little bit ago, I start thinking, well, why would I be hungry? What does food provide for me? Okay, it provides energy. It also can provide comfort. So am I eating because I'm trying to find comfort and I'm trying to feel better? Am I eating because I just had a session and I have really low energy and so my body is telling me to eat something? Or, other reasons. Asking yourself why. Why do you have these feelings? And being okay with the answer. That is one of the biggest techniques that I use. And a lot of times it's because, like, I just passed a Burger King and all of a sudden I'm hungry. And I'm like, why am I hungry? Oh, probably because I passed a Burger King and I started thinking about a Whopper with cheese and some fries on the side and extra salt on those fries. And then my mouth starts watering and my body is like, yes, you're hungry. Go eat that burger. A lot of times it's simple as that. If you just ask yourself why and come to a conclusion that you feel okay with, you're going to be better off than the people who are not asking themselves why they feel that way, why they're doing that. And it's not a lot of people will ask it in this tone of voice, like, oh, I'm hungry. Well, why are you hungry? Why? Why could you be hungry? Like, they're already disdainful about it. They're already judgmental in a negative light, not like in a, oh, maybe there's a valid reason I'm hungry, judgmental. But no, you're not actually hungry. This isn't acceptable. You're probably doing something you shouldn't be doing. When you just ask yourself, curious, like you're very curious, why am I having this reaction? Your mind will produce answers that then you can ask more questions and be like, well, why do you think that? Why is this? And it will get you to a better state of mind where you can actually find some real answers.
I think in kind of understanding dysregulation and kind of what the results are in people's minds and people's actions, you can definitely see how trauma has been such a useful tool in pretty much fogging people's minds up to what is actually going on and kind of creating a circumstance in which they feel like they're responsible for their actions because they're simply not thinking. And to some degree, they're responding in patterns that effectively continually are re-traumatizing themselves. And it's not getting any better. So in large part, people are ashamed to identify that they're having a problem when the reality is that they're conditioned to go through the same circumstances that leads to them just being re-traumatized again and effectively in a closed loop. But I think with the crappy childhood fairy as an example, she says, there is a solution and it's just about finding that solution for yourself. And so if that is something that people are experiencing, just knowing that there's a solution out there is I think a first step towards maybe asking why.
And there's a difference between thinking and knowing, right? So if you think something, that is distinctly different from having a knowing. Like, this is the way to go, where as opposed to I think that's the way. So that's and it kind of hints also that thinking has to do with awareness. And awareness, that's also, it's at the base of consciousness, really. So there's a relation between the thinking process and consciousness itself. And if we go, I hinted at like at the beginning of the show that the thinking isn't as opposed to what we associate with thinking, which is just the brain or the physical brain, which is like our modern medicine that associates just the brain with that. But thinking seems to go way beyond that. And it's actually interesting because you have cases of people that had a physically deteriorated or sick and non-functional brain, or where large sections of the brain were physically gone, not even there, but they were functioning normally. I think there was a man in France, a case years ago. And that's really interesting because that proves that, wow, it is not just the physical brain that does the thinking, but there's something way beyond just that. And but I think even to lay that out is like it fills books, and I think it's a highly interesting subject itself, because it's really at the base of who we are and what we do and of the world that we live in. Because if the if the world that we experience here on the outside is really just a reflection of what's going on in the subtle, like on the inside, then wow, like it certainly does have a lot to do with the thought patterns and with the quality of thinking that we we are putting out day and night. Not even like in deep sleep, like our thinking stops. And then if you also look, which is a highly interesting subject also to look into, people that would have physically died but that came back again, and that could remember things that that happened, and can describe situations that happened around their body at that time while they were clinically declared dead. So that's also like, wow, what kind of processes, what kind of mind did capture all of that, although the brain shut off and the body was physically dead. So that is a subject, I feel, that has to be
Oh boy,
yeah.
we're going into dangerous territory here.
Now I'm really intrigued. My headset was dying and I did not hear what you said, Dennis.
Oh god. The last thing I mentioned was people who were declared clinically dead, and who came back, who revived, who came back to life, and they and who would describe situations and describe their surroundings, the people, even what was being said, and physically, it's supposedly impossible for them to actually have heard that, because they at the time were pronounced dead. And so yeah, that was one of the rabbit holes I touched upon.
I don't think we're prepared to go down that rabbit hole today, but we should pin that one and we should just call that one the rabbit hole. Do a whole episode on that.
Yeah, that definitely is worthy of an episode. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. And that's from Marcus Aurelius.
Hoorah. Yeah, that's some good stuff.
A lot of people seem to be pointing to the inside, eh?
Have we had any comments, or are we just like totally just blowing people's minds in the audience? What's going on?
Right at the beginning, we had one from Amber, and she said, "That's good, Willow." But I'm so sorry, I don't know exactly which one of your comments.
Was it just labeled Amber?
No, Caps.
Okay. I'm wondering if that's one of my friends. If it is, hi, Amber. If not, Amber.
Yeah. Yeah, no other comments so far.
Well, it's go ahead.
No, I just wanted to kind of bring up, like, this isn't just, it's not all our own failing. A lot of it is, we have a lot of responsibility to take here, but let's not oversaddle that horse. I'd like to point out that our schooling system is not an education system. It is a schooling system that has taken out critical thinking. It's the middle part of the trivium. It's the logic, right? Grammar, logic. The processing has been taken out of schooling, rightfully so, because when you're trying to school someone, you're not trying to actually educate them and get them to think for themselves. You're trying to instill and indoctrinate a particular agenda. So human beings are actually really good at critical thinking when they're allowed to hone that skill. But when that skill has actually been punished in school by your teachers and your peers, you learn not to use it. It's almost like a survival mechanism where, like, you can't stick too far. You can't stick your head too far above the crowd. You're going to be that nail that gets hammered down, and no one wants to be that one nail that sticks up and gets hammered down. So it's not all our own failing. It's not that we are just stupid human beings who refuse to learn. Most people have been indoctrinated and kind of forced into this, where it's not safe to think for yourself. It's going to be punished. You're going to lose your social network. You're going to lose your friends. You might even be ostracized from your family if you start asking too many uncomfortable questions. Your income might be at risk if you start, talking about topics that, make people too uncomfortable. So yeah, I'd like to, just bring that to light, because there's already enough shame to be dealt with when you realize that you haven't been thinking for yourself. We don't need to add any more on top of that. There is some responsibility to be had for the people who are actually encouraging this and instilling it, especially in our youth, because they don't have the resources to combat full adults, like with the intellectual capacity to think for themselves. Children just don't have that, and I think that's a really nefarious tactic that has influenced and encouraged this whole situation to where it is.
I
Yeah,
have.
I'm definitely
Yeah, go ahead,
definitely
Mike.
agree with that. Well, I would just say that, yeah, indeed, it is the system has dumbed people down, has instilled a scarcity mindset in the vast majority of people, to where they don't see the opportunities, they don't have the awareness to see that there is the potential for abundance, and that our mind is essentially infinite when it comes to ideas and creativity, and how that could impact the world in a positive way from even an individual standpoint could be tremendous. But because we don't have any awareness of that, we're kind of stuck in a box. And really, it is one of the things, the people that are left that have the free, that understand the value of freedom and understand the value of having intellectual self-defense. It's really up to us to prove to the rest of the world that this is important, that critical thinking is important for being like entrepreneurs, and that having our own thoughts is incredibly important for our our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
And how do you cut through? How do you teach a child how to cut through that groupthink, that propaganda, the indoctrination? And I feel the current situation is definitely a potential learning curve multiplier, or it can potentially increase the learning curve on that level a lot, or it can completely how would you say, in German we say gleichschalten, which means to put everybody like in the same box, which is happening all around as well. But now it's like even visibly happening, because we're supposed to wear those funny things in our faces, and it's very visible if somebody doesn't do so. And so I'm just in my mind like just having the parallels, basically how to cut through that.
It's the scarlet letter. It's the
Yeah.
scarlet letter if you don't have your mask on.
And then if I think about children and youths, if you have an entire school or an entire class and they're doing this one thing, whatever it is, you as an adult, you might have a different standing if you would have cut through some of that conditioning before. But as a child, it is so difficult, it's so hard, to stand your ground and to not fall in line with everybody else, if you cannot see at least one or two or three that are also, looking left or right and looking what else is there, instead of just looking in the same direction. And so I believe it is really essential for us as adults, to not only set an example with, we talked about critical thinking, with using our thinking abilities and potential and expressing it as well, and sharpening it as we're doing here, certainly, by meeting and sharing our perspectives and our thoughts among ourselves, but also with others, and teaching through doing. And we are certainly not without fault, but it is like truly like a sharpening tool, to reason, to talk, to exchange different opinions and different views, and then to have children and our younger ones actually listen and look at us. And so we lead by example, because it shows that all social experiments that would have been done in order to evaluate and see the impact of groupthink on the individual, they showed that the potential of the one testing individual falling in line with the group think, with the prevalent opinion of the group, was diminished a lot if there was only one or very few members of the big group that also, would speak their mind, or would truly speak what they see. Oh no, hold on, this is BS. Those two lines are not equal. The one on the left is much shorter than the other one. And if somebody in the group call out, then the one who was being tested, he would also say, yeah, that's true. Or he would be much more likely to actually also voice what he truly thought, instead of just adjusting his thinking process and the expression of his thoughts basically to the group think.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's a perfect example of an experiment that's been embodied in pretty much everything that's going on in the world today. I think it's Gustave Le Bon that wrote something like the Power of the Group or something along that line. But it's the group psychology book from like 1895 that like Bernays with Propaganda and some of the others kind of expanded upon. But the idea is that in groups people lose their tie to responsibility, and when that takes place, then it's just like when governments grant corporations immunity from prosecution, what usually happens? Not good things. And that's something that Gustave Le Bon pointed out in 1895, and I think they jumped on that opportunity to, the powers that be jumped on that opportunity because they understood, hey, this is a way that we can kind of create an irrational kind of loop in people's mind, and then we can get away with whatever we want.
And the ability to really change the group think, the prevalent thought or mindset of the generation has been increasing ever since, what took, maybe a whole generation in order to change a perception of a certain aspect, or, of life or of culture, now will take, just a few years, a handful of years, or even less, in order to change to change the opinion of the majority of an entire population, and to change the culture. And war has been, just like one big tool in their toolbox that I've been using. And I don't remember exactly the quote, but it was saying, that in 5 years of wartime, you could change, much more than 50 years of peace, because and we have been constantly in war, right? Like, oh, there's war against drugs, war against terror, war against this, war against that, war against Corona. I said it. War against God knows what. Yep. And
oh no, we're gonna get banned.
Oh man.
Did we blow our own minds? We're just at a loss for words at this point.
Well, there's just so many avenues that we could take this down. I don't want to, because we're almost at the end here. I want to kind of try and wrap it up in some conclusion. And I think if we take off on another topic or another tangent, we could definitely go well beyond our time.
How about we do takeaways? What's our takeaways from this conversation? What have we learned? What do we need to tell people?
Well, I guess the number one thing is really you're responsible for what you think, and examining what you think is incredibly important to really, as that quote, was it Gandhi, the quote that like what you think and what you say and what you,
yes,
eventually what you think leads to who you are and what the world becomes. And you're responsible for that when it comes to the person that you are and the group of people that you're around and you surround yourself with, the network of people. What you think is important. And certainly that experience that you have and being able to communicate that, the experience that you have to other people is important. And unfortunately, this is something that's been degraded incessantly over probably the past 100, years. And to a large degree, what we're left with is a great deal of people that don't feel like they have any control over their lives and don't really feel that they're responsible for anything. They're pointing their finger at everybody else and really missing the boat on how they take control of their own life. It starts with thinking their own thoughts.
I think my biggest takeaway and advice for people is um, gain some self confidence and some self esteem. Have trust in yourself that you are a human being who is built to survive. And part of surviving and thriving is taking what's in front of you, analyzing it, and doing something with it. Um, One of my quotes actually for my business that I put on my business cards is action follows belief, because what you believe will influence how you act. And ultimately you have to have some self-confidence. You have to trust that you are a capable person. It might be hard at first. It's going to feel overwhelming. You're not going to know where to look for this information. Start asking questions. Start asking questions of yourself, and trust that you have some answers and you have the ability to analyze those answers and find some logic in it and figure things out. This is what we're built to do. Even though schooling has taught us all that this is not possible, that we're all really dumb and we need someone else to give us our answers.
Nice. One thing I would like to conclude with is to, you know, what what kind of environment can you expose yourself to? Can you put yourself in that will facilitate positive thinking, that will facilitate the kind of thoughts, the kind of processes that will help you, to move forward in life, to overcome the next hurdle. What are the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with, that stimulate your thought processes, that encourage you, that challenge you as well. We need challenge as well. Sometimes we're too comfortable, and then we need somebody, we need a situation, we need an environment that actually shakes us up. We were talking about traveling the last show, so that's certainly also something like, whoa, you're seeing things not only like on a TV screen, far like sitting on your sofa, but you're exposed to like a totally different culture and environment, and those things certainly stimulate your thinking processes as well. Exposing yourself to the differences that are there without judging them, but just taking them in. Okay, this is like that, this is like that, or this city looks like that, this guy has that opinion. Okay, so take it in, and then use your thought processes to compare. Once somebody said, thinking means denken heißt vergleichen. To think means to compare. So if you only let the same kind of thoughts and the same thought in your mind all the while, then you don't really have nothing much to compare. Mike was mentioning fantastic books. That is certainly also something one could use to stimulate thought processes. I see it now with my children. I mentioned it last week when we talked about our favorite books. Wow, that's those are like strategies. Like I would like to encourage others also to take those roads if they resonate with you, and tap into the potential of our thinking processes, of the opportunities that we have through that, and don't stop. We're here to grow. I think, Mike, you said that, and if you're not growing, then we're stagnant, and if we're stagnant, then we're soon gonna go down. So it is ups and downs in life, but if we set the stimuli in the right order and at the right point of time, then like the line is gonna go upwards, and our thinking ability and processes are certainly there to be improved. And so those were just some hints and some ideas that I think could help us to improve our thinking, our thought processes.
I was just going to comment on one of the things you said there, Dennis, or a few of the things you said there in regard to, like, surrounding yourself with people that, are conducive to thinking, and creating an environment that's healthy for thinking. And that's certainly something that I'm sure, we've all experienced with autonomy. And this is probably a good opportunity to, like, make a little bit of a commercial for the idea of autonomy and what they're doing, to kind of create a community of people that support each other to be more responsible and autonomous as individuals, but also as a group, as a community, to support each other in, really kind of coming to conclusions and solving problems based on what people bring to the table as far as their talents and skills and abilities and gifts that they have. Those are things that can impact other people, and in a community of people that have, that understand that value, that's one in which we're encouraging each other to think more, because the more we think, the more valuable we are, the more valuable we are for ourselves, the more valuable we are for each other. And I think that's a great experiment that I think is definitely showing results and demonstrating why thinking is important and how thinking can benefit each individual. There's, I don't think there's a better example.
Agreed. And then maybe last but not least, take time and observe your thoughts as well, and observe who is doing the thinking, and cut through things from there. And then, there's a potential of reaching somewhere behind the thoughts and the one who is thinking, and that opens up a whole new world in itself.
Yeah, I guess I'll just mention on that regard, journaling again is one of those great habits that can facilitate that kind of circumstance where you can write down the questions and the answers to the questions that you pose to yourself, that may give you the inspiration to make a change, to start thinking more, to stop regurgitating thoughts that have been put into your head. But with that said, this is the end of the show for this week and this Wednesday. We're here on Mondays and Wednesdays, 5:35 Eastern time. For the most part, maybe a few minutes after that, maybe 10, depending on who's running the show. but nevertheless, we try and show up every Monday and Wednesday and have a discussion about something interesting and thoughtful and hopefully important.
And we have been doing so for quite a few months, eh?
Yeah, I think we're closing in on our 1-year anniversary here pretty soon. Maybe we're gonna have to do some kind
didn't
of.
It start in December? So I think we only have
December.
like 2 months.
Who's gonna bake the cake?
Yeah, so we'll have to start planning for that.
Whatever you feel like baking for us for the birthday celebration.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'll have cheesecake.
That sounds good.
With
that said, we appreciate our audience's time and attention. Certainly hope this is valuable for you. We certainly offer the opportunity to comment or give us questions, give us any kind of feedback on what we're doing. Hopefully it's all good, and stay tuned for next week. Do we have any ideas of what next week's shows are going to be?
No.
Not at all.
We haven't had the meeting yet.
It's going to be a surprise. Yeah, well, we've had a lot of members that are moving and shaking and doing their thing, and unfortunately they're also the ones that controlled the production. that's been a little bit of an effort, but
maybe it's going to be one or two of them coming back and bringing exciting news from their end of the world, no?
Yeah, well, definitely want to thank Dennis for standing in for all this time
and learning it so
making
quickly.
This production happen.
Not kidding. He learned how to do this in like 3 days. So
and certainly your better half for being the technical advisor that
I was just going to say that. Yes, yes.
She's a very
Our
good
tutor.
teacher.
Big time. Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity as well. And well, I guess I'm growing little by little on that end as well. So yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity and looking forward to getting even better at it.
All right. Well, with that, I
Yes.
guess it's time to click the button.
Thank
Do
you so
the
much,
thing.
everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye bye.